Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. This is the second installment of our iconic Hollywood Composer series with executive producer Carol Connors. Film composers are a little mysterious, aren't they? I want you to think of your favorite film with me. Why is it your favorite film? Chances are what you recall is being transported to another world. Like only a great film can do, you are pulled into a new life that is not the one you live in every day. You completely lose track of your surroundings for a few hours. And in those hours, your emotions fluctuate wildly. You feel hope, excitement, even love. Maybe you felt fear, danger, or exhilaration. You feel alive. Your heart beats in your chest just a little harder, and your breath is snatched from your body. The music sweeps over you, tossing and turning your body as if you're in the ocean in whitewash of melody. How was it that what you saw and you heard evoked these powerful feelings and emotions? There's nothing like it. When a good movie does this to you, you're lost. But it's the music. Your favorite movie was scored by a master whose intentions were to move you, to make you feel, and make you feel they have. Charles Bernstein was born on February 1943 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He has scored over 100 feature films, as well as numerous television movies, documentaries, and short films. And as a child, he demonstrated early musical ambition and talent, conducting his own orchestral compositions by the age of 16. As a young man, he attended the Juilliard School in New York, where he studied composition with notable composers Vittorio Giannini and Vincent Persichetti. Persichetti, sorry, my Italian. I need to practice my Italian more. His first score credit was the documentary Czechoslovakia in 1968. And the film and the score are notable because it was a nonverbal film. And the story, pretty much nonverbal, completely nonverbal. And the story relied heavily on Charles' musical narrative. His first Hollywood theatrical score was White Lightning in 1973, starring one of my favorites, Burt Reynolds. His score for White Lightning was later sampled on Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds and Kill Bill Volume 1. Since 1995, he has been a member of the Board of Governors of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Music Branch, and he's also held prestigious positions with composer societies, including ASCAP and the Society of Composers and Lyricists. He won a Daytime Emmy, and he has been nominated twice for a Primetime Emmy. He is renowned and highly esteemed for his remarkable versatility, having worked across various genres, including horror, drama, documentary, and television series. His A Nightmare on Elm Street score is among his signature works. And for A Nightmare on Elm Street, Bernstein wrote, performed, and recorded all the instruments himself, the bass, synths, and percussion. His scores are often cited for their psychological tension and creativity, despite being produced on constrained budgets. And additionally, modern hip hop and pop artists have sampled or repurposed passages from his film scores. Most notably, Drake and 21 Savage sampling a choral sample from his Invasion of the Bee Gees, the Bee Girls score, excuse me. Charles Bernstein's career spans over 5 decades in Hollywood, placing him among Hollywood's greatest film composers of all time. Welcome, Charles Bernstein.
Ah, thank you, Jeremiah. That little introduction, I was so moved by what you were saying about our profession. You really kind of nailed what it is we all aspire to do when we write music. It is a weird, mysterious business that I'm in. I have to acknowledge that, and you kind of nailed it. We do something sneaky to the audience, and the purpose is to take them both out of their bodies and also really put them into their bodies. You talked about the pulse rate accelerating, the excitement, all the physical sensations we have. A lot of that is music and music driven. People don't know what's causing that emotion, but you take the music out and you pretty quickly realize, oh, that's not quite so exciting, that chase, without that tempo and that drive. So anyway, I was taken by your description of what it is we aspire to. I don't say we always accomplish it, but that's what we're about.
Well, that makes me feel good that I captured it where you agree with it.
Very much so. Yeah, yeah,
Um, it really, I don't want to take any magic away from the magic of filmmaking or
yeah.
film, but I mean, you know this because this is your life, but when you watch a film cut without music,
Mhm.
it's almost like those uncomfortable silences that you experience every once in a while with
Yeah,
in a room. It's really the music is everything, and the music adds everything to it. Not to take anything away from
yeah.
directors, cinematographers, actors, and all that, but really music.
It
Uh,
all comes together.
scores.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And yeah, you're a little bit of a manipulator, aren't you?
yeah,
By
yeah.
profession.
Quite frankly, our job, I say us, people who write music for media and films and games and all of that, our job, among other things, is to tell the audience how they're supposed to feel about what they're seeing. In other words, you can see something, and there's a kind of, you can see a close camera panning as feet walking upstairs. It could be a lover going to meet a lover. It could be a murderer going to meet a victim. It could, you're not sure how you're supposed to feel about what you're watching. The music, among other things, helps you know what the intention of the filmmaker is. It's, yeah, this is going to be a suspenseful thing. And that allows you to go with what the other crafts are. The camera is showing you, the director is telling you, the writer is, leading you towards. And in a sense, we carry that responsibility. And yes, it's done stealthily. We could put a big title on the screen saying, "You should be feeling scared now." We could, maybe that would do something, but better, we should be seeing something and then told how to feel about it. Yeah, you're
That's
watching feet, but you should be frightened.
that is such an interesting perspective that I hadn't really considered. But you're right. In a way, you're offering us security in our insecurity,
Yeah,
like what's going to happen next. But you're giving us a little bit of security, like, trust me,
yeah.
come along and see what happens next. I love that idea. So another thing that really fascinates me about you is that you were conducting your own orchestral work around 16, as rumor goes.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm curious about is up until that point, or at what point during those early musical experiences did mentors shape you, or what sort of inspiration led you to creating
Yeah,
orchestral work? And then,
great question. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Jeremiah, if I had to pick a singular word, I'd probably say love. It wasn't a mentor. Mentors came later. I just loved music. I thought, gee, I want to do that. I want to be able to, create something like that. And that first orchestral piece that I did publicly at 16, I remember, just being kind of driven by the things I loved to listen to and to try to do that kind of thing. It wasn't a great piece. Um, it was an opportunity. Uh, uh, in the audience that day was a man named Leonard Stein, who was Arnold Schoenberg's kind of right-hand person. And he kind of introduced himself and said, maybe I could be some help to you. And I studied very briefly with him, but at that moment in time, the great Dmitri Shostakovich had come over from Russia with a delegation of from the Soviet Union. This is way back. And I was introduced to Shostakovich by Stein as the youngest composer in LA that he knew, and he wanted to introduce me. Anyway, one of those memorable moments that came from that, but not because the music was great. It was just, I was driven to it. Then I had teachers, the Giannini, Persichetti, different, but it started with just trying to do that thing that I was so taken by.
and how did those mentors, or Giannini and Persichetti, and the others that you mentioned, how do they influence your voice at that time as a film composer, or maybe
Mhm.
your future voice as a film composer? Was it impactful in ways that later um, showed themselves in
That's a really profound question. The person who was a real mentor came a little later. It was Roy Harris, who was one of the great American symphonic composers, along with Copland and Barber and all those. And Roy gave me permission to have my own voice. He never said, "Hey, you should do it like I do it," or, it was all, and the great gift I took from my mentors was it's okay to be you, uh, okay to be me, don't have to become John Williams, don't have to become, you know, Copland or any of these great composers. Be yourself. Some people will like what you do. Just the confidence to go forward was the great gift that I got from those guys.
Mm. Well, Czechoslovakia in 1968. I think you did one score before that, but this was
Yeah.
a documentary. Maybe would this be your second score?
It was very close to the beginning. Yeah. Not all of them are on IMDb, but Czechoslovakia won an Oscar. That's why it was significant. And when the director received his Oscar, Dennis Sanders, he said, "I'd like to thank." And then I heard my name. He called me Chuck Bernstein at that point. I hadn't become a Charles quite yet. And I realized in a flash why people thank people on the Oscars. It like changed my life. Suddenly I was credible. Oh, yeah, he was mentioned last night on the Oscars for a documentary. It was a short documentary, but the Oscars have this tremendous power, I realized, to improve people's lives. So it made it a lot easier for me to go forward, having been involved with an Oscar-winning project.
And the film, I have not seen it, but the film, I'm told a lot of the storytelling is through the
Yeah,
music. Was
yeah.
that for you?
Mhm.
That seems like what an opportunity to really get into this craft.
Yeah, I'll tell
What
you
a lot of
something,
pressure
Jeremiah.
for you.
it was such a frightening moment, and I'll tell you why.
Pressure, man.
I mentioned Dmitri Shostakovich a minute ago. This little movie that I did had temporary music in it. We call it temp tracking. And it was all Shostakovich, Prokofiev with these giant symphony orchestras. And I'm on this minuscule budget where I can afford 12 musicians. You know? So my experience was, okay, I have to shape the narrative of this little movie that's now being shaped by Shostakovich, Prokofiev, and all these incredible historical immortal greats. And it felt daunting. And I thought maybe I'll just turn around, spin on my heel, and get the hell out of here because this, you know. But thank goodness it worked out. And with very, very limited means, I was able to give the film what it needed. Not great music, not Shostakovich and Prokofiev, but it needed that thing we were talking about, which is to help the narrative, help the audience follow it and know what they were experiencing.
And you did so well with that challenge that you were mentioned as Chuck
Yeah.
Bernstein at the Oscars.
Yeah.
By the way, Chuck Bernstein, I love it. Charles Bernstein, I feel like there should be a big uh, headstone or like a what's the like a wait, you know what I'm talking about though, the like your head should be carved in
Yeah,
stone.
yeah, I have a bust of Beethoven
Bust,
here.
thank you. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
find that word.
I think
Thank
I'd
you.
prefer the Chuck if that's what I get with the Charles, but yeah,
I'd like to see Chuck on that bus. I mean, that would be different. Chuck Bernstein.
yeah. I think I have a Beethoven bust here, but I won't grab it. Okay.
Well, you've worked across action, horror, drama, documentary, all these different genres, each requiring different things of you, and different disciplines and creativity. How do you adapt your natural compositional approach
Uh,
to different types of these different narratives?
Another great question. These are questions I ask myself pretty frequently. When I start a new project, I notice I always like it to be nothing like anything I've ever done. I just loved when I got Sadat. It was like a mini series about Anwar Sadat. It was set in Egypt, and it was, I thought, oh my God, I've never done anything like this. Or when I did the Burt Reynolds pictures, Moonshine Whiskey in the South. I've never done anything like that. Suddenly mandolin and banjo, dobro, fiddle, a whole world that went with that. The trick, I think, is to listen to what the movie wants rather
Mm.
than what you want to give it. And each of these movies, whether it's a small country in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia, whether it's Burt Reynolds running whiskey in the South, wherever and whatever it is, it will tell us what it wants, what kind of music it needs. And I think the job of people like me is to listen carefully to what that environment is crying out for, what that story is crying out for, and what those characters are crying out for, and help supply it. Now, the big question you're asking is, how do you go about that? Because each thing is a different world. And that I'm not sure that might be a mystery, but that's the name of the game. Get into that world, find it, and let it find expression musically. And we just do whatever we can to do that. When I'm talking shop with composers, we go into nuts and bolts about this stuff. But just generally speaking, you dive in and pray.
And are there cues? Because we mentioned at the beginning, when you watch a film, when you get the film or when you're in that room and watching the film
Mhm.
and then determining how to score it, and what elements you'll pick from your toolbox to create that powerful, all those powerful feelings that the director wants conveyed and that you want conveyed.
Mhm.
Are there cues that you look for? Are there, because it's silent,
Yeah.
you have not been, you have not added that score. It's so we don't know how to feel yet. Are there cues that you can pick up to tell that story?
Yeah, that's where the director comes in, the writer, the actors. We're looking microscopically and macroscopically at this thing and trying to find those cues. Interestingly, the name of each piece of music in a film is called a cue, but it's spelled C-U-E. So it's kind of an interesting coincidence that we're looking for cues when
Right.
writing our cues. But yeah, we look at an actor's little movement of an eyebrow or averting the eyes, or the director saying, you know, the audience is going to discover that Uncle Joe isn't such a nice guy. And maybe we want to start to, in other words, the director is giving us cues, the
Mm.
actor. Sometimes the lighting and the camera moves are, oh yeah, this is kind of noir. And then that brings up a genre. And then maybe, well, maybe a saxophone is the way to go here. Or, you know what I mean? All of these little things give us cues. Composers have to read the room. They have to
Right.
read the movie. They have to read, the script, the director. So we're usually very sensitive people. I love my colleagues. It's so rare to meet a film composer that isn't just, I mean, you met Marco, wonderful Beltrami, wonderful guy. I mean, they're all like that. They're just so sensitive and tuned in and interesting, I think. I may be an exception to this, what I'm talking about, but I just love the community because of how sensitive and how tuned into these cues all of film composers seem to be. Maybe all filmmakers across the board. You kind of pointed that out. I'm singing the praises of film music, but that doesn't exclude cinematographers and writers and editors. And, it's a sensitive community.
I feel like music is one of those things that I could talk about forever, but probably never figure out. You know what you know how it makes you feel, but
Mhm.
you don't know how it happens. And I talk to so many artists that say, I don't know how it happens, but it comes to me, and I did that, and I created that. I think there's something so magical about what you do and who you are, what you offer all of us in the world. And you talked about these musical cues just then. I also like when you go against type in a way as a composer, or when you're scoring a film, and you give us something that we almost thought we knew how the soundtrack was going to go with the scene, but then maybe you went in reverse, and so now I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Those types of decisions, um, where you change what you're expecting to
Mhm.
something, a sound that makes you uncomfortable in a different way, and jarring maybe. And your early years, many of the films that you scored had very modest budgets. And when you look back at those times, those films and those tight budgets, did you enjoy those challenges working with those little small budgets, and what that required of you creatively?
Yeah, yeah.
Creatively?
No, without question. When I did A Nightmare on Elm Street, I had no idea that, all these years later, anybody would ever remember that movie. I thought this was a quick one-off. It would go straight to video and disappear. It was just so bizarre. I didn't understand kind of what its potential was. And my decision to play all the instruments, sing all the parts, record it myself, partly was based on this tiny budget and the fact that I thought, you know what? Nobody's going to hear the score anyway, so I'll really stick my neck out. Um, Very often, the limitations we're given are the gift. There's a wonderful uh, phrase from a poem. I think it's by Wendell Berry. It's the impeded brook that sings. You know,
Mm.
that wonderful sound of a flowing brook, water. It's the obstructions that are creating that wonderful sound. And very often a limited budget or a limited, time frame to do the score, all these limitations force us to do something interesting. And sometimes composers put this limitation on themselves. I was just writing about this. Dave Grusin wrote a tremendous score for a movie called The Firm. He decided, I'm just going to use a piano.
Oh
And
yeah, that's a great score.
isn't that something?
Yeah,
And,
I love that one.
yeah. And people don't think of this, but the great score for Psycho, Hitchcock's Psycho, uh, Bernard Herrmann, that ting, 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 that screechy
Yeah.
violin thing. And that score is only strings. There's no percussion. There's no other instruments. And like The Firm, it's based on subtraction and limitation. And sometimes composers will choose limitations like they did to kind of limit us and force us to do something unusual and creative. That was put upon me by the budget in Elm Street, and I wouldn't have done it to myself, but I'm kind of grateful that they forced me to do some creative stuff.
Very creative. Yeah, creative because you have to be.
Yeah,
Not you already are, but then you have to go even. You got to go a little bit further.
yeah,
Uh,
it pushes you. Yeah.
I so it's we're almost at Halloween. We're in October now. Um, I know you've probably answered these types of questions a million times, and I apologize for that. But I think my listeners would be mad if we didn't talk a little bit about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Sure.
Would you call that your signature horror score? Would you
This is
define it that way?
interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd use that word, although it could become that uh, aside from my intentions.
How
Uh,
would you say it?
Well, the interesting thing for me is I've done, I think, close to 130 feature-length films. Maybe a half dozen were horror. Cujo, The Entity, Nightmare on Elm Street, the sequel to Rosemary's Baby, so maybe six. And those are the only movies that still have huge, huge fan, energy behind them.
Yeah.
So in a way, the fans sort of decide. And it seems to me the fans have kind of enduringly come back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And I've seen it recently. Last year at this time, Halloween, it was its 40th anniversary, and there were celebrations around. And I was speaking at a Q&A after one of them, and I was thinking, my gosh, 40 years, people are still watching it. So the fans decide that it's a signature thing. And I'm swept along with that, but it's not something I would designate. I love
Well,
love the
I
film
have.
and I love the score.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's amazing how it just keeps building, doesn't it? And
yeah.
one of my one of my friends and guests that's on all the time is Andros Jones, and he was in the fourth Nightmare on Elm Street, and he it drives him crazy because he's known for that. He wants to be known for other things, but he says, during this time he can make at all these different, from a Comic Con to these different
Yeah.
events, he makes enough money to play music all year long based off a couple of weeks of showing up and signing autographs for Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, you sort of walked us through your creative process with the budget and the instruments and how you came up with all that. How about the theme development, the instrument choices and the texture
Yeah.
selections? Can you describe your process with
Yeah,
that?
because I had so much limitation in, orchestrally, no orchestra, and by the way, synths had just been invented. We're talking the mid 80s. There's no history to any of that prior to this time. So essentially, uh, I have to put my mindset back into like how did it feel at that time? Because right now a lot of this stuff is very common, but at the time it was not. There was no path that had been, kind of structured for. Um, Jeremiah, what was the core of that question? Because I think I'm not hitting uh, the
Well, just
target,
some of the process that you went through on your end and your imagination, your creation, for the development of the
the
theme.
thematic
Yeah,
actual, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And the
There's a 10
texture.
note, yeah, a 10 note theme. Da da dee da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And those 10 notes I hadn't written until I was halfway through the movie, when I was working on it. I went back to Wes and I said, would you mind if I create kind of a theme that's just melodic? It's just a melody that keeps
Mhm.
coming back. The way classic film composers often approached movies in the 40s and 50s, it's sort of a traditional thing. And Wes said, absolutely. I was surprised because I thought he just wanted stings and scary stuff and that would be too traditional. He encouraged it, and I'm so glad I did that. A student of mine caught I think it was a Wall Street Journal interview with the great director. For some reason, I'm blocking his name now. He did that wonderful series with Michael Abels. Anyway, maybe it'll come back. Sometimes
What was the film?
um,
Did you say Wall Street or no?
no, no, no. It was a one-word title, and it was a few years ago. Very scary, set kind of in the South. Prominent black members of the cast.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's a one-word title. Yeah, yeah. There we go.
Somebody will email us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will feel so embarrassed that his name is escaping me right now. But he was interviewed, and it's even on my website.
I'm gonna find it right now while you're
Yeah,
talking.
good. Yeah, it. Hmm, yeah, so be it. Anyway,
Is it Jordan Peele?
yes,
Nope.
it is Jordan Peele, the
Nope.
great Jordan Peele, the
Does
amazing
Get
Jordan.
Out?
Yeah,
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 he's got a
that
lot.
was, yeah. And Jordan pinpointed those 10 notes as one of his favorite, horror film music themes. I was so gratified when
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah, Jordan Peele, who's, come on, he's like the exact guy you would love to love your music or love your
Right.
film, because he's so incredible. So anyway, yeah, so Wes approved those 10 notes. And he said, yes, that da 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 da, is good, but this will give it kind of a scope and give the movie a thematic presence, a melodic presence, which
Mhm.
is to me always the challenge of film scoring. Try to do everything the movie needs, but express it through some melodic, memorable way. So yeah.
And there's your signature.
Yeah, that has become
Horror.
kind of a signature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a signature of yours for sure. The
Yeah.
horror movies or the horror genre, they often require like an invisible music, quote unquote invisible music that heightens the
Yeah.
tension
Yeah.
without drawing you away from, you know, without drawing attention away from what's happening.
Yeah.
How do you, Charles, how do you strike the balance between being effective for that scene and then being too obvious?
That's so great. The music has to do two things in that regard. It has to be music. You have to like it. You know what I mean? The music itself, forget the
Yeah.
movie altogether. The music has to have some inherent musical qualities and values. So we strive for that. But here's the trick. At the same time, it has to function in all these ways cinematically and be good music. And that's the challenge for those of us doing this thing is we want to, we can get the effect. I call it functional. We can make functional music that you don't particularly want to listen to or that isn't enjoyable in some way. I was listening to Dave Grusin's score for The Firm. I was thinking, I'm loving listening to this. The
Mhm.
themes and the blues for his brother, and these all these things and the inventiveness, and it's functioning. It's got you on the edge of your seat and all of that. So when it's done right, you can hit both targets. You can make music and you can make the film better. So that's always our aim.
Well, so you mentioned Bernard Herrmann.
Mhm.
He's a director and a composer, John Carpenter, director and composer for horror. Have you ever considered directing or getting on the other side, shaping a film from a different perspective creatively?
You know, I have no interest, by the way, in
Okay.
being a film director. However, I have directed, I have taught acting, I have uh, danced, I've written for ballet. I've done a lot of stuff, uh, but for my own gratification. But career-wise, I have zero interest in directing a movie because I know how demanding it is and how much it's out of my wheelhouse to know all of the things a director has to know. I'm barely able to cover my little piece of turf. Uh, Directors are just astonishing. But no, I don't have
No,
any aspirations outside of my profession.
you were talking about the Firm soundtrack and that piano and the choice.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest? And the score on that is just incredible. Kind of it
No.
reminded me a little bit of the Firm where it's this jazz piano and it just builds and builds, but it plays for good 20 minutes, but it
Oh,
really makes a part, it becomes a character in the film. When you talked about that Firm
do you know the
soundtrack,
composer offhand?
I don't. I was just looking it up to see if I could find who it was.
Spike Jones is amazing. I've met him and he knows how to handle music. I, didn't he
Oh
do
no,
Her? Was that his movie?
Herb.
Her?
Oh,
The
her. Yeah, that was a great. There's
Yeah,
another great one. Hey, we should just talk our favorite scores. We should do a whole episode on
right.
that. Um,
Absolutely.
well, I'm running out of time, and I do not like that because I have so much more to ask of you and to your wisdom, pull your wisdom from you.
Uh,
I love Quentin Tarantino. He has used your music in films, because like Kill Bill, we talked about Inglorious Bastards. Well, you're borrowed from, I guess, your second or your very first Hollywood
yeah,
film.
yeah,
How do you feel about your work being recontextualized by other filmmakers and sampled by people
yeah,
like
yeah. All the
Drake and
top
yeah,
guys. Yeah. No, I love it. Anyone could only love it. It feels
compliment,
like,
isn't it?
yeah, it's an homage feeling, and it's just such an honor to, Quentin Tarantino is so incredible. I mean, it just blew my mind that he knew my music. When I first met him, uh, he had a familiarity with me, and I thought, "Oh, how can this be?
He knows your
In what
music.
universe does Quentin Tarantino know my music? But apparently he knew it, and that was, yeah, no, he's extraordinary, and I never stop marveling at like the script structure of movies he's done, how he thinks.
I know it's a brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant writer, and such a. I love that he understands the history of film and scoring. And I mean, he's obviously a fan of and has spent
hmm
many hours in movie theaters watching your films and your scores and paid homage to you. I love that he loves film so much because so do I. I get that.
that word comes back again. The thing that makes him great starts with how much he loves stuff.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there. And I find that at the root of so many good things is our love, our full engagement in something that just fascinates us and yeah, yeah.
Did you love film when you were a child?
Well,
Did you know where you wanted to go with your music?
it's funny. I was saying yes, but then I'm remembering, and this reminds me when I met James Earl Jones, the great actor. He had told a story that evening about how frightened he was of movies, how it freaked him out. And I remember my first experience was terror. It's like, oh my God, this is these huge, I was overwhelmed. And as a little kid, I was frightened. But very quickly, in my young years, I just fell in love with movies. They mean everything to me. I watch them, the TMC or anything, I'm always just grabbing a movie. A day doesn't go by that maybe on YouTube or somewhere I'll find something or re-experience some moment. Yeah, thorough movie love.
You
So,
were like, as a little boy, you were like those people when they first saw the movie on the screen where the gun shot at the
yeah, yeah,
screen or the train came out.
yes,
They
yeah,
ran because they
yeah,
thought the train was coming at them.
yeah, yeah.
That was you, huh?
Well, I was having trouble with reality probably to begin with, and then to have this other reality overwhelm it, I was probably like, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" But
Right.
I quickly got that movies were a wonderful storytelling medium, and they spoke to me in ways, and I can see great movies over and over and over again. So,
Mm.
yeah,
They're magical. They're
magic,
magical.
magic.
What a great business you're in.
Ah,
Well, I've got a couple more questions before we have to say goodbye, unfortunately. I'm gonna
sure.
this question's for the musicians, the composers out there that the musical nerds
Yeah,
in the kindest way I say that.
yeah.
How has the transition from analog to digital,
Mhm,
advances in synthesizers, sampling,
mhm.
and digital audio workstations changed your compositional workflow?
Okay. Uh, Great question again. It's like a miracle. I'm sorry. Yes, I prefer to go to an orchestral concert with, all the instruments in the same room and all. That's all great. That's the state of the musical art. But the technology is like when I was a kid, if I could have imagined a world in which we could do what we can do today, it would be so sci-fi miraculous. I mean, a day doesn't go by that I'm not marveling at what I'm able to do technologically. It's just incredible.
Mm.
So, I mean, there's no arguing with that. But I mean, okay, YouTube is a technological thing. We were looking at a little pad and the people aren't in the room. But when I see Carlos Kleiber conducting music that I otherwise wouldn't even like I've never been big on Beethoven's Fourth or Der Fledermaus, the Fledermaus Overture. It's not my piece. But when I see Kleiber conducting back in the 1990s, 80s on YouTube, it's bringing me something that I couldn't have imagined, when a conductor's gone, to see
Right.
them and to feel them and to hear them talking. And yeah, no, I'm just totally grateful to be alive in this era. Yeah.
And you remained not only relevant, but you have outdone yourself over and over in your film scores and your compositions, and you've been working in Hollywood uh for, as I said, like in the beginning, 5 decades or more.
Yeah.
And few can say that. I mean, that is very, very, I don't know. I mean, you've got to be very proud of that. And all those years that you've worked in this business, is there some advice that you would give a young film composer?
Yeah,
That's,
probably so. First of all, the word for me, I don't feel proud, but I feel so grateful
yeah.
on so many levels. I mean, to just get to do what we do. Composers need a movie before they can do what they do, you know. We can't just like take a sketch pad and, you know, or type, you know, type out a novel or whatever. So I'm grateful. And I've been very fortunate and very lucky and very, very blessed. So, and as far as young composers go, I think if they always come from love and stay close to gratitude, because we all are so lucky to be in this profession and to have these opportunities and so forth.
Yeah.
So to
Good advice.
stick with those basics and the rest will follow.
Are there any younger composers right now today whose work impresses you that you're watching?
You know, there's so many, and it might be unfair for me to try to name, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I'm
I
involved in the
don't want to start a
academy.
war.
Yeah, no, we're always bringing in new members, and there's so many really wonderful young composers that are just so inventive and so advanced in so many
Mhm.
ways. So, yeah, I'm again very fortunate that I get to meet these people, pick their brains, learn from them, and you know, and they're
And they from you.
well, maybe a bit, but I think I get it's an imbalance and I get the advantage on that. But it's a wonderful, wonderful crop of new talent coming up. Just, you know, so extraordinary.
And your book, your 2000 book, Film, Music, and Everything Else, you
Mhm.
pose a question. You pose two that I was curious of what your
Mhm.
thoughts are. One, can limitations free us?
Yeah, I love that essay. I've written 130 essays on film music, and the one on limitation. Yeah, I, I have never met the person who's not limited in some way. All of us have limitations. The thing that makes us who we are is how we work with our limitations, how we accommodate them, acknowledge them, and embrace them, because those limitations are the signature of what makes us who we are. That I believe I believe that
Mhm.
for myself.
Mhm.
So I think that chapter on limitation is a good thing to read. I read it once in a while myself.
Charles, what can silence teach us?
Ah, it's the bedrock. Music is built on silence is the canvas upon which music is painted, is another way to say it. Uh, yeah, and using silence as another note of music, especially in horror, understanding when, how, and where to use silence musically. Beethoven's third starts out with those two chords, but there's two rests after each one of them. Those rests, if they weren't there, it wouldn't be the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, just yeah, silence is so important.
All right. Well, we unfortunately our time is coming to the end here. This has been so uh enjoyable is one word. I've
For me, certainly
really,
for me.
yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation with you, and uh, your outlook and your thoughts are really inspirational. What are you working on now? Are you anything you can talk about or anything you're excited about?
You know, the last three projects I've done have been my favorite things from my everything. I've just got very fortunate in the last couple of years. One of the pictures that I'm most excited about is called Bigger Than Art. I don't even know if they've got a distributor yet. It's a feature-length doc, and it's been the most satisfying experience I think I can point to date. And I did a wonderful little movie for some folks in New York called Land of the Mustaches, winning all kinds of awards and little festivals. So those, and I did a short film for some people in London. So little scale, huge satisfaction the last couple of years. So
Oh, we'll look for them. Leonard Maltin, national film critic and author and television commentator, says Charles Bernstein isn't just an astute observer of the film music scene or simply a participant. He's a philosopher. His writing is stimulating, informative, and fun.
Yeah.
And Marilyn and Alan Bergman, Academy Award winning lyricists for The Way We Were, Yentl, and The Windmills of Your Mind says of Charles, Charles Bernstein is a film composer. In this collection, he writes about more than music. He writes about music as a metaphor, about the inner life of the creator and the mystery and the magic of the creative process. He is at times a dancer, at times a magician, and he is always a fascinating writer. They're talking about Charles Bernstein's book, Film, Music, and Everything Else, which you can find on Amazon. That's where I found it. Written in 2000, Charles Bernstein, as of course, as you know, is a Hollywood composer who has written music for countless movies and television films. And in this book, he delves behind the world of film music to examine the creative process in our culture. You want to pick this book up. It's got great essays. And Charles, there's some exciting news, I hear. You are putting out a new edition.
Well, yes, this is going to be counterintuitive, but I would say maybe don't buy the book.
Wait
Wait
till the
just a bit, because all of the essays, I've collected them all together. There's 130 essays on film, music, and life, putting into one book. So those essays, along with another 100, if you can tolerate that number, uh, is forthcoming. So maybe keep an eye out for that.
Okay, and I want to direct everybody to your website as well, Charles. You can go to charlesbernstein.com, Charles, and then BERNSTEIN.com. A lot of great stuff on this website. You'll get stuck on it for hours, as I did, I am sure. Go out and watch some of Charles' movies, the movies that he has scored, the films that are just really timestamps on all of us on our lives over the last couple of decades. Really, really great work, Charles. And such an honor to have you on today. Such an honor to meet you and be able to talk a little bit about what we both love, music and film, and especially.
Jeremiah, it was a total pleasure. I thank you, really.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank Carol Connors for introducing us. Carol is the executive producer of this Hollywood Composer series that we are putting together. And Charles, you really made this a great one. Thank you so much.
Love to Carol. Yes, thank
I
you.
love to
Thank you,
Carol.
Jeremiah. Okay.
Communicate, but listen more and evolve. And go see a movie, why don't you? Have a great week, everybody.